Good morning and welcome to the Woods Church Chesterfield Church Online. We are so glad that you have joined us for worship this morning. Maybe this is your first time tuning in or you've been with us for a few weeks. If you have yet to connect with us, I encourage you to text the word CONNECT to 586-200-1785. That way you can find out a little bit more of who we are here at the Woods Church and the ministries that we have available. We also wanted to let you know that we are back live in person, and we would love for you to come worship with us. You can worship each Sunday morning at 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. here at our Chesterfield campus. There's something about gathering with the body of believers and lifting up the name of Jesus that does amazing things. So we invite you to come back in person each Sunday morning at 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. We also wanted to thank you so much for your continued generosity. It is because of your generosity that we are able to have an impact even this fall well beyond the walls of our church into our community. And so we thank you so much for your continued generosity. If you have yet to connect with us that way, there's some really easy ways for you to be able to give. You can visit thewoods.church.org/give. You can also utilize the Give button in the Church Center app. Thank you again for your generosity. We also want to encourage you to hit that share button on whatever social media platform that you are most comfortable with. Go ahead and share these services because you never know the power of a share and what that might do to the lives of the people that are in your circle. So go ahead and hit that share button. Well, things are going to look a little bit different this Sunday morning. This would normally be the time where we would go into worship and sing together. But we just want to encourage you, as we tune our hearts to God's word, that you would still be in a state of worship as we hear from Pastor Laren.
Well, I want to welcome you this morning and so glad that you've made the choice to join us online. And today is going to look a little bit different. But what I hope happens today is that this is an opportunity to pause, maybe just for a little bit. That even though you're there and we're here, but that it's a chance to pause and allow God's Spirit to move right where you're at, in your home or wherever you may be this morning. You see, I was thinking about this week. I've noticed over the last several months that my Apple Watch, that there's the reminder to breathe. There's a breathe app that reminds you to breathe every once in a while and takes you through kind of a breathing exercise. That I feel like it's gone off more over the last several months, and there's some kind of theories of maybe Apple has done it that way so that when it senses that you're stressed, when your blood pressure or your heart rate's higher, that'll go off and remind you to breathe, because there's good things about doing that. But I don't know if that's true, but I do feel like it goes off way more frequently over the last few months than it used to, and maybe it's just in my head, maybe not. But right there is a lot to worry about. And there are a lot of things to be more stressed about during this season, right? If you're a parent, especially here in the Yankee Bay School District, you just found out 2 weeks ago that no, surprise, you're not going in person, but you're going virtual. And so there's kind of been the fallout from all of those things. A few weeks ago, we found out that the Big Ten, there's going to be no college football. I cried for a week when I found out that news, and so that's, been tough for me to deal with. Then you're kind of maybe watching the economy and watching the stock market, and some things are good, some things aren't good, but then you think, what does this look like in the future? Yet in all the racial tensions that have been over the last several months, just when we think things are moving forward and there's some progress, then something else happens, and it just causes all that stuff to come rushing back in. And then just the politics, right? Elections coming up in a few months in November, and then you just throw in the virus, right? This pandemic that we've been navigating through over the last several months that now has caused our regular interactions with people to be way more limited than it ever used to be, right? That you've got to wear a mask when you're out and in public, and so people can't tell if you're smiling or maybe you've got a frown behind the mask. I love it because as an introvert, I can have my hat on, my mask on, and maybe no one knows who I am, and I can just be incognito wherever I go. But, if you're working from home, right, you're used to these normal interactions with people that you work with, getting out of the house and some people that you enjoy kind of being around at work. That's not maybe what it used to be, or even just activities with other people, with your family, that have just changed from what you have been used to. And I think there's all these things that now, anytime I have a conversation with people outside of kind of those normal interactions, outside of my family and maybe some close friends, anytime I have a conversation with people that, especially if I haven't seen them for a while, that conversation always ends up, we're talking about the pandemic, we're talking about what the schools have decided to do, we're talking about the economy, we're talking about politics. And so I feel like every conversation that I've had with anybody for an extended period of time that just ends up in that direction. And add to it the fact that some of the things that we use to cope have been so restricted that vacations don't look like they used to look like. Time with family, right? Our family, most of them are in Texas, and so we haven't been able to see them except through FaceTime. And so that changes those things that we do. You know, we get together with family and enjoy time together, but what does that even look like? And then just for church. What does it look like for church? That online has been great, that I've been thankful that we have this opportunity to connect with you online, but you realize that there is that need, that desire for connection. That the truth is that your Heavenly Father and your relationship with your Heavenly Father is, while it's certainly personal, it's dependent upon community. It's dependent upon other believers and praying for one another and encouraging one another along the way. And so without that, I think our spiritual lives have taken a hit in this season. And so you just have this constant pressure that never seems to let up. And I've heard from so many people and so many conversations I had, well, man, I just wish some things would get back to normal. I just wish I could have a break from some of this stuff. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Christian or not. We're all feeling this season, and it continues to just seem like, well, I don't know if it's ever going to let up, and I don't know if it's ever going to stop. Well, there's something that Jesus said, that when he said it, and in the context in which he said it, and what was going on in the culture around him, in the society around him, that what he said, it made people kind of sit up and listen. It made people think, man, this sounds like it's something that I need to listen into, and I need, Jesus, what you're talking about. And basically, Jesus made this comment, and he says, I understand the stress and the anxiety and the worry that you feel just about daily life. And he said, I've got a solution for that. Jesus said, I understand the pressure that you feel, and I have a remedy for that. And then you have to understand Jesus' audience. The political unrest that was always kind of right there in their face as they were under the thumb of Roman rule. It was just this constant daily reminder that God was punishing them and the taxes that they were imposing on them. It never seemed to end, and it seemed like it was this weight that they couldn't bear. And then think about their economic climate back in that day, that there were a lot of have-nots and very few haves. That 9 out of 10, statistics would say, and historians would tell you that there was an estimate of 9 out of 10 people in first century Palestine possibly lived in poverty. And then you add to it that if you were a good God-fearing Jew, the religious system that had been set up, there was this constant idea, this constant feeling of never quite being able to measure up, that there was a sacrificial system that had been put in place that had a higher burden upon the poor people. That if you were poor, not only did it look like, well, then you made some mistakes along the way and there was some sin in your life and, well, God was just not blessing you. You know, because if you were rich, that meant that you were doing the right things and God was blessing you. But if you were poor, this religious system that had become way more than God ever intended it to be had become so heavy and become such a weight for people that there was so much struggle in their lives. And so when Jesus said the words that we're going to look at today, it certainly made the people sit up and listen, say, oh, I might need some of that. And so this is what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 11. He says this, he says, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. He makes a statement, he says, listen, if you're worn out because you've been stretched so thin and everything you got in your plate in this season, come on, come to me. That if you're tired of feeling anxious and afraid of what might be coming next and what you might have to deal with next and how are we going to move forward in this season, Jesus says, come on, come to me. That if you're feeling right now drained emotionally because even in this season you felt isolated from what normally kind of fills you up, the relationships that are normally encouraging you, if that's you, he says, I want you to come to me. That if you feel in this season like you can't take on one more thing, but for your family and your finances, oh, no, your future depends on it, and so you can't just let go of some of these things. Jesus just says, come on. Come to me. That maybe you're the strong one, but even now in this season, you're feeling the strain. Jesus says, come to me. That if you're worried that things are out of your control, that if you're worried because, it just seems like you can't keep up, you're staying up late at night and you can't get to sleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night and you're thinking about things and stressing about things, Jesus says, listen, come to me. You feel like you got the weight of the world on your shoulders, come to me. And you're hurting because of the toll this is taking on your kids or your family, the toll it's taking on you. He says, come to me. And if you're feeling exhausted, that maybe right now you're feeling bitter or lonely or angry, that right now this season has been such a struggle for you and you can't figure it out. He says, come here. Come to me. And what Jesus is laying out is he says, come to me, all of you are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. There's an incredible exchange going on here. He's saying that if you'll come to me with your weariness, if you'll come to me with that burden that's weighing you down, I've got something I'm going to give you back. And the thing I'm going to give you, it's rest. I've got something that I want to exchange for that. Whatever you're going to give me, that weariness, that burden, I've got something. I'm going to actually give you peace for that. You give this struggle to me, and then I'll give you rest. And this is completely opposite of how we operate in our culture, right? Because if someone said, hey, I've got something for you, and if what you're giving to me, it has no value, right? You'd say, well, no, that deal's too good to be true. If someone came to us and said, hey, I'm going to take your junk and I'm going to give you something that's valuable, we'd be skeptical. And we'd be wondering, hey, what's the catch? Jesus here, as he lays this out, it feels like he's getting the raw end of the deal, that I'll take what you don't want and I'll take what you want to get rid of. And Jesus says, I want to take the burden that you're carrying, and I want to take the stress that you're holding on to. I want to take the stuff that you've tried to handle on your own and it's just weighed you down. I want to take all that, and I want to give you something that's valuable. I want to give you the thing that you're looking for. I want to give you rest. And then in the next verse, in verse 29, he tells us, okay, this is how that can happen. That if you'll take my yoke upon you, if you'll let me teach you, and he says, the way he says is, I am humble and gentle at heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. He's saying, take my yoke, and that probably would have made way more sense in Jesus' day, in the agrarian culture that they were living in. It would have made way more sense to them, but he's using this figurative language of a coupling together. He's inviting you and I, in the midst of our anxiety and stress, and he says, I want you to connect with me. I want you to come to me. I want to have a connection there, and then let me teach you. And this is so profound because this isn't what we do in our culture. Because if someone, came to you and you felt like, hey, you've got some real people skill issues, we say, why don't you go and you get, take a self-help class. If you can kind of figure out your mess and fix your problem, well, then we can talk and then we can work on that. Or you're just a little too bitter for me and you're always complaining and you're always pointing out what's wrong and never seem to be happy. You never seem to be able to enjoy life. And before we kind of have a relationship, you need to go get that fixed, or maybe you're too much for me, and I need you to go work on that before we can kind of do any life together. But see, Jesus, he's not doing any of that. He says, I want you to bring your brokenness. I want you to bring the mess that you are. If you feel like you're stuck in lust or stuck in anger or stuck in fear, hey, come on over. And then I love how he says, I'm humble and gentle. He's just saying, I'm not going to give you a guilt trip. I'm not going to give you a guilt trip, and I'm not going to berate you. I'm not going to criticize you. I'm not going to put you down. I'm not going to make you feel miserable about yourself. That's not how this works. Because I want you to experience rest. And I'm actually going to lead you in that direction. I want you to experience, and what he's saying is that what I have for you is deeper than any physical or emotional type of rest. This is more than just taking a nap, or this is more than just getting away on vacation. This is more than seeing a counselor and reading some self-help books. He's saying, what I want for you, what I want you to experience is the kind of rest that's so much deeper than you could ever, or anything in this world could ever provide for you. And he says in this next verse, in verse 30, he says, for my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. He's leading to this idea that, listen, I'm asking you to come to me, to follow me. And I've already taken care of the difficult part of this equation. I've already taken that out of the equation. Because this invitation isn't, hey, start doing what's right. No, his first statement is, I want you to come to me. That's the first thing he wants you to do. That's the solution. To take what weighs heavy on you, to take that thing that just has you worn out. And he's saying, hey, I don't want you to try harder to overcome those things. I don't want you to, put in more effort. But I just want you to come to me. I want you to walk with me. I want our relationship to be one that I am walking with you so that you can overcome that struggle and that weariness. That I actually, instead of spending all the energy to try to, take care of all the problems and solve them on your own and finding some kind of solution, instead of spending all your energy doing that, I actually just want you to spend your energy chasing after me. Come to me. Come to me. If you're feeling busted and broken, come on over. Because what I have for you is something you're not going to find anywhere else. I think it's funny how, God works in certain situations and in certain seasons in our life. That literally, this week as I was preparing this message, kind of knowing where I felt like God was leading, where it needed to end up. I'm in the middle of writing this thing, and I'm at the house, right? The kids are doing their thing, and all of a sudden they're fighting. They're arguing over the TV, and they're arguing over, I don't want to pick that up, and I don't want to do this. And so there's this big fight going on. Our dog Mo, at that point, he was chewing something up and, just driving me nuts. And Jen was upstairs. She was working. She was in the middle of a meeting. And then I got a couple text messages, got a couple phone calls in the middle of writing this message. And I got to the point where I was just done. I couldn't write anymore. And I couldn't think anymore. And I think God checked my heart and said, hey, Laren, this is what I'm talking about. That if you're going to get up there on Sunday and you're going to talk about this thing, I need you to understand. I need you to understand where this is all going. Because, Laren, I know that right now you're trying to get this done. You've got a deadline. You've got to have it finished up. And you've got to record. And you've got to get all ready for something. I get it. But see, it's this, Laren, that I just want you to come to me. I want to be that first step. When you're feeling all that pressure and you're feeling like you can't handle it anymore, I know that it might be easier to do this or head this direction or figure out this way to solve it, but Jesus says, no. I want your first step to be me. I want your first step to be run to me. And so this morning, I think that's so important for us to do. That yes, I know that I'm here and you're there. I get the reality of that you might be sitting on your couch this morning, you got your bowl of Fruit Loops and the kids are running around and the idea of rest or the idea of kind of just pausing for a moment, that's not even really a reality. That even this service, as much as you've tried to kind of focus in, there's been so many distractions. But can I just ask you, just for a moment right where you're at, would you just pause? That if there are some distractions wherever you're at right now, would you just do your best to put those to the side? That it might even mean that you put your phone on silent, that you put your phone in the other room. It might mean that you go into another room in the house and close the door behind you and just focus in on what's next. Because in just a moment, we're going to have our worship team. They're going to lead us in a few songs. And what I want this time for you to be is simply rest. That instead of trying to figure out the rest of your day, right? It's Sunday and you got a busy week ahead. The kids are going to jump in school and, you got Labor Day planned. I get all that stuff. But I think there's no better time than right now for us to prepare our hearts for this season than to just pause for a moment and rest, to find a quiet place. And so as the band leads us through these songs, it's what we'd say if you were here. I want you to find a posture. I want you to find a place. I want you to find a way that this is just you and God. There's no expectation on our end that maybe you stand up, right? If you're out in public at a coffee shop, that might be a little weird. But whatever it is, whatever you need to do right in this moment, this is a chance between you and God to just rest in Him. So we're going to give you that time over the next few moments to do just that. But before we do, I want to pray just to set our hearts and our minds in the right place. So dear Heavenly Father, God, I pray that you would quiet our hearts. I would pray that you would quiet our minds in this moment. That I know we've got a lot of things going on, and this season has taken a toll on us. But God, I know what you want is for our first step to be towards you. So in this moment, God, we're taking that step towards you. We're taking that step into the rest that only you can provide. A type of rest that we can experience your peace no matter what's happening around us, no matter what the circumstances are, that we can have rest in you even when nothing around us is at peace and nothing around us is in order, but we can rest in you. So God, as simple as it is, and I know it's just a few songs that we're going to sing together, God, I pray that for some maybe that are at the end of their rope, for some that are experiencing just some situations and circumstances that have so brought just anxiety and stress into their lives, God, I pray that this moment you can allow them to push those to the side for the moment to just rest in you. So God, we love you and we give you praise. Amen.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. And all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, and I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am made, and I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. Come on, sing it out this morning. All my life, and all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness, God, is chasing me. Your goodness is running after goodness of God. All my life, all my life, all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And I will sing of the goodness of God. Let's sing that together one more time. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, and I will sing of the goodness of God. You know, when I was preparing for this service this morning and just kind of thinking through, even songs and praying through some of that, I just thought it's such a good way to start our morning, just by lifting and declaring how good our God is. And, there's a part in that song where it actually just basically makes this promise or tells us that the goodness of God is pursuing us. And if I'm being honest, the first few times I heard this song, I was trying to wrap my mind around what maybe that looked like or what it meant even for me personally. And I think, even, and I guess I even am getting a little annoyed saying this, but like even in this season that we're going through, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be offensive when I say that at all, but just this time that we're experiencing as a church, as a world, as a community, just with everything that's going on outside of these walls, thinking through, I guess, what it means that the goodness of God is pursuing us. And can I tell you that what that means to me, my interpretation this morning with the season, with the things that we are experiencing in a world and as a people, it means that regardless of what we're experiencing, that the love of God and the goodness of God is always around us and always with us. And, I even think through, like my 3-year-old, she makes comments like, Daddy, can we go to Home Depot when coronavirus is over? And I'm like, yeah, we can do that eventually. But my prayer is that one day there will be a time where she's maybe old enough I can explain to her that even in the midst of the fact that you couldn't go to Home Depot because of coronavirus, that the goodness of God surrounded you where you were, even as a little 3-year-old, not necessarily even knowing it at that time. But thinking through what that means for each of us, that regardless of what this has meant for us in our works, whether we're working from home, whether we're not working anymore, regardless of what this has meant for us in our marriages, maybe being around each other more than we're used to and it's causing tension or whatever it could be, that the goodness of God and the love of God surrounds us wherever we are. And, I just wanted that to be what I shared with you. And as we've kind of been doing these last few weeks for this next moment or so, we're just going to kind of, sit in a moment of just kind of reflection and just an opportunity for us to put our minds and hearts in a place as we continue to worship this morning. So as you do that, again, this can be your own thing. Whether you want to close your eyes, just a moment where you can just kind of sit in this moment and just prepare our hearts as we move forward and continue to worship Him through song this morning. So just for a moment or two, just on your own in this place. So God, this morning as we continue to worship you, I pray that we would worship you in our minds and hearts, that we know that your goodness surrounds us, that your love is always with us. God, I pray that in our own places this morning, where we stand in this room, that we would just create our own little sanctuary of worship to you, that we would just lift up your name and that we would worship you in our place this morning. So God, we give you praise. Amazing love that welcomes me, the kindness of mercy that bought with blood wholeheartedly my soul undeserving. God, you're so God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me.
Behold the cross, age to age, and hour by hour. The dead are raised, the sinners saved by the work of your power.
You're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. Lift it up and declare, God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. I am blessed, I am called, I am healed, I am whole, I am saved in Jesus' name. Highly favored, anointed, filled with your power for the glory of Jesus' name. I am blessed, I am called, I am healed, I am whole, I am saved in Jesus' name. Highly favored, anointed, filled with your power for the glory of Jesus' name. And should this life bring suffering, Lord, I will remember what Calvary has bought for me, both now and forever. Just lift this up. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. that you are good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. Yes, you are. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. I am blessed, I am called, I am healed, I am whole, I am saved in Jesus' name. Highly favored, anointed, filled with your power for the glory of Jesus' name.
You're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me.
Walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet. Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence, you never failed me yet. No, no, no. And I know the night won't last, your word will come to pass, and my heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still enough. Keep me within your love. My heart will sing your praise again. Oh, yes, it will. Come on, declare this morning, the promise. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. lift this up this morning. I've seen you move the mountains, and I believe I see you do it again. You made a way where there was no way, and I believe I see you do it again. I've seen you move the mountains, and I believe I see you do it again. You made a way where there was no way, and I believe I see you do it again. I've seen you move the mountains, and I believe I see you do it again. You made a way where there was no way, and I believe I see you do it again. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. Yeah. I'm still in your hands, singing. This is my confidence. You never failed. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail me yet. You never fail me. You are so faithful, God.
Well, I hope that was a great time of rest and worship for you. And I want to leave you this before we go this morning, before we close out our time. And see, Paul, he's writing to the Christians living in the ancient city of Ephesus, and he's writing them, he's instructing them, helping them kind of understand how to navigate these days. I mean, they didn't have Bibles, and they didn't have Bible studies, and they didn't have church buildings. They didn't have any of that stuff. They were figuring this stuff out as they go. And Paul says these words. He says, in his letter to them, he says, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10. Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. And what he was just doing was reminding them, listen, there are going to be places in your life, areas where you're going to feel some weakness, but don't worry. Because that's where you need to be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. So I know that this morning, as you're kind of thinking about your week and what you've got to do, maybe you're thinking about your role as a parent. You think, man, how are we actually able to raise these kids? And you feel that area of weakness in your parenting, or maybe that area of weakness for you is within your marriage, or maybe it's something in your workplace, or maybe you're kind of feeling the pressure in some relationships in your life. Wherever you'd say, hey, I'm feeling just like I don't measure up. I'm feeling in this area, it's a weakness for me, and it's not where it needs to be. This struggle, maybe it's a struggle with sin in your life. Can I just tell you that's the perfect place for God to work. Like that's the best area for God to do what God does, because it's in that area that you can rely on his strength and his power. So my prayer that for some of you, as you start school with your kids next week, or maybe it's just a new season for you as we enter into this fall season, there's going to be some new challenges and some new complications. In those areas where you're feeling, man, I just don't measure up, and I'm just feeling like this is a weakness for me, can I just encourage you to say that, God, this is then your area. I'm weak here, And this is where I need your strength. This is where I need your power. So I pray that you would lean into that during this season. And my challenge to you this week is that you would passionately pursue God and relentlessly reveal Jesus to the world around you.